Hello again. Um, my name is Kai, and this is, I guess, my second official recording under the series that I'm hoping to create called Sincerely Me. And right now, what I'm going through in life, which is what I want to share, and hopes to, I guess, connect with others who are going through this journey or maybe not aware of it yet or are fully in it and maybe is on the other side of it, because I realize how lonely it can feel to be actively and intentionally healing long time held, I'm going to say CPTSD trauma that had occurred at a really young age, from like 0 to 7 and then 7 to 14. Um, yeah, I actually just maybe half hour ago experienced like an hour of crying on and off. And what I learned this last 2 weeks, I'd hoped to do a recording every week, but last week I just found it really hard. When you're really in the thick of, I guess, processing, there's just some days just not enough energy and feeling vulnerable and just not having the brain capacity to even figure out setting everything up to do a recording, or I think trying to figure out what to say even. And I can tell that I'm struggling a little bit right now, which is why I tend to look off everywhere, because it feels a little uncomfortable. So my apologies. I'm still getting used to this. So what I discovered in this last week and a half, 2 weeks, is that I'm apparently in, if there were numbers to the phases, if it was that clean distinction, that it's like I'm in the last phase, like phase 5, I think is what it equated to. And it's the grief part. So, and I'm finding this part the hardest because throughout releasing and processing the actual trauma, thoughts and emotions, they were concrete, they were tangible, tied to specific thoughts, negative, right? Like about ourselves. And if you're familiar with neurolinguistic programming, we frame it as, thoughts that are towards good for ourselves versus thoughts that are negative, away from ourselves. And we can have, the thoughts can be beliefs or limiting beliefs and decisions about ourselves, or even just emotions, negative emotions. So I had experienced that for, I've been going through the cycles of healing specific traumas, and then more intensely since last August, I noticed something, just like there was much more intensity. And from September to really February, yeah, it was very intensive because I was actively being intentionally putting focus on it, giving myself space, and doing the work. Because I also self-coach myself with NLP practices to help release. I didn't quite realize that there's grief in processing the specific events, thoughts, or beliefs, but I didn't realize there'd be a separate phase of just what I call ambiguous grief, where it's not specifically tied to an event, where I'm not grieving about something, but it just is overall less tangible grief of maybe a period of life or grief of a theme of something. And it's really been throwing me off because it could be fine waking up and then I feel this heaviness come in, I feel fatigue. And it seems quite all of a sudden in that there was nothing to have triggered it or cause it. And it literally is like somatic. It comes up and then I can't even put my finger on it and just feeling like maybe I feel like I need to cry, but I don't know why because there's no thought attached. And realizing that I did a lot more sort of internal conversation with like my higher self or self-led, if we're talking IFS modality, and talking with unconscious mind, like being able to hold that conversation. It's like, what is it that we need? Even though I can't, no words are coming up. And it just felt like I needed to cocoon. I needed to sit in a corner in the dark. And that there's emotions coming up. And so that took I think a few days to kind of understand. And when I did, it's a whole different kind of emotional release. It definitely feels more like grief because it's less specific. And instead of the fear and the terror and the hurt coming through, and there's grief around that, where it's much more stronger and visceral. Like you're grieving about having been unheard or treated without respect, or, in my case, like physical abuse or emotional manipulation caused a lot of trauma and grief over those specific events. But now it's like there's just sadness coming through and kind of closing the loop of realizing what I had missed out on or didn't get. So even though we close the loop on the thoughts, like, if I felt like I was unsupported, like that's closed. I know that I can support myself now, but there's still the grief of like not having been supported for all those years that still has to get processed. And while I was doing some more research on like, wow, this is actually a phase that I didn't realize, I just thought, there's the grieving of the specific events, but the word that caught my eye was where the body somatically is actually trying to metabolize the whole thing. And it's a little mind-blowing. But then it also helps me to understand why I can feel all of a sudden like really heavy. It's like literally it's trying to process some really deep stuff. And there's remnants, and that's the part that really threw me off, is even though I release the negative thoughts or limiting beliefs, there could be like little glimmers of that shoots through the brain, and you're like, whoa, what? And then it causes me to feel a little bit scared and doubtful of like, oh, maybe I haven't healed, maybe I'm going backwards. But then now I'm learning that, oh, that's actually like just little fragments that's being cleared out, and sometimes your brain just need awareness, like you have to go through it again. So kind of sucks, honestly. And the fact that almost every day something comes up, and then I have to practice being mindful and holding space for myself to get to a space or environment that is conducive for whatever's to come up. And today I was walking the dog after I started feeling heavy. I thought it had to do with me working on my bookkeeping finances. Never a happy thing. um, but I felt more heavy than I thought was right, or not right. What's the word? Warranted. And then I started to just feel like, oh, there feels like that welling up with something. So when I got home, I was like, okay, do I need to sit on the floor, lean on the couch? That's what's been working for me the last week. And then it was like, no, I need to sit in the dark. And as I walked by my bedroom, I just felt the sense like I need to sit there. So I sat on the carpet, on the ground in my bedroom, leaning against the bed. And I had put my earbuds on to like listen to music to just kind of help me feel into the body. And because I know that sometimes when I try to sing, there's certain notes to hit. Like, I think it has to do with like resonance that can trigger it. And it did. And it was, yeah, like, and it felt like multiple different kind of breathing bits coming through. So on and off, I cried for like 50 minutes. And I think it was like 30 minutes in, I was just like, oh my God, how much more is there to this? And feeling awful, like feeling like I've dropped into this pit of despair at the same time. So then I started to do my digital journaling using an AI journal that is trained to help prompt, like kind of like self-coach through. And it really was me grieving and getting to experience the emotions I've had, that how hard it is to have gone through things and how hard it is right now to go through this, and feeling the fears of that I might not be healing. And what does it look like? Like, am I really healing? And what does the other side look like? Like, will I ever reach the other side? And when I reach the other side, how will I know I'll have gotten better and that life will be better? Because there's such big unknowns, and I never known anything beyond what I've experienced before. So all of which was just me needing to express that and feel into it. And that's the part that really is surprising me, is all the emotions are probably suppressed or didn't feel because it's too scary. I'm experiencing them all now. And having to remind myself that I am capable, otherwise my body wouldn't allow me to experience it, which is why it's been held back. And now my nervous system is finally regulating enough, and more towards ventral vagal, that I'm able to have this come through, because the unconscious mind, the nervous system won't let you unless you're in a safe enough state that they believe you're in a safe enough state. So I had to be reminded, like, that is how it happens. And of course I asked it to give me proof. Like, is this true? Is this based on the findings of all the top trauma experts, right? Bessel van der Kolk, Peter Levine, Gabor Mate, and a few others that my brain cannot remember the names of. But that's when I was like started to feel more assured, and that's part of it. It's like needing assurance that this is normal. And no matter how many times I ask it to validate, I swear when you're in the thick of it, I mean, like, I'm in my 50s, early 50s, and to be crying and saying that this is so hard, and to be in that type of grief when just earlier today I was feeling really normal and, enjoying my morning walk with my dog Finn, and he's been healing alongside with me, and he is able to show me his joy more than I can right now. And he will signal it. He's smiling, trotting along, and then he'll like dart at me to like get me to engage and want me to hug him. And that's him trying to share his joy to me. And it's like I can feel partial of it, and that can frustrate me. But to know that I had that experience this morning and then going to completely bawl, like, okay, I won't say bawling. It's sobbing, but more of a quiet sob, like soft, long term grief, and not the absolute gut wrenching heartache crying, which is what has been the norm for releasing the trauma type of grief. Those have been intense, like truly bawling, eyes out, sobbing, gasping for air type. Whereas this one, it's a soft sobbing, tons of tears, even though you're softly crying. It's it's fascinating. I didn't think a human being could cry so much. Now I understand why. Throughout my early adult life, why if I'm feeling something overwhelmed and I cry, there's a lot of tears. Yeah, I think I added it up. 11 years of trauma, most of which is from early childhood. So that would make sense. But I don't know how much more there is to this grieving phase because everyone's journey is different. But the fact mine are just like one after another, I have hope that maybe I'm just at the stage where my body is ready to just heal them as much as it can. But it means that I have to try to give myself more breaks to sleep because whenever I sleep well, I find it that I have more capacity to process, integrate, metabolize. Because not only when you cry, but somatically stuff happens too. Like I feel my diaphragm muscle or the fascia gets really tight. Then I have to massage it. Or my upper back gets really achy and sore. And so there's all areas that are holding grief somatically also have to come through, and so physically you're impacted as well. So not just mental, emotional, but physically. And of course, energetically, my energy is like, it goes from like high-ish and dropping to really low. And now I'm kind of coming back up as I'm sharing. It's helping me to come back up a bit. But then spiritually, like I'm just not as chipper. And I feel like I don't have the capacity for my positive self as I normally am. So yeah, it's a lot. And I always think to, gosh, if someone else is going through this, I feel for them. And I don't want anyone to feel alone because I certainly have felt alone, even though I know I'm not, but I, live on my own. So if you're like dealing with menopause and healing trauma and you live on your own and you're in that season of life of like, there's just a lot of changes, period. Oh, and I still navigating technically new, what do you call it? Career and business, like trying to build up my coaching practice. And I'm starting to feel like I have more capacity for, and there are people that want it, but I just haven't been able to feel like I can be the best version of me. And I have been doing some more impromptu, like with my career side. I do fractional work as a consultant and for organizational enablement and change initiatives for organizations. And I have been doing coaching within that container and feel very privileged to have been able to use the NLP to helping people access root cause and release limiting beliefs and emotions that are tied to it. That's what holds people back. And to see their transformation, I'm always in awe. Like, not that I need to be reminded that this stuff really works and it can be fast. because most people have experienced trauma, and when they're unresolved, just helping to close the loop on it. When we have trauma, our body and our mind, if it can't handle it, it suppresses it. So it ends up being an open loop, and it will decide when it's safe enough that you can process to bring it back up. But for some of us, it can be an open loop that just keeps circling and circling, and that's where we have patterns of like challenges or dysfunction, or we can get frustrated, like why, right? Like why does this keep coming back? And now, if you have CPTSD from early childhood, it is definitely much more complex. Takes a lot more work, because that's my experience. But I am also grateful. I know that sounds weird, but I think the term that I love is collateral beauty. Me having gone through this, and still am, I'm doing the work myself, that I not only talk the talk, but I can walk the talk, because I've lived experience and still am, and experienced probably one of the more complex scenarios, which then gives me the experience, aptitude, perspective to help my clients through this, to provide the support, because I know what it feels like. Not that I would know what everything could feel like, but I can definitely empathize a lot more, I think, than someone that's not gone through it. And I recognize how important like the holistic work is. So, and had I not discovered that for myself, I don't think I could be moving at the pace that I am, with where I'm at. And even though life isn't easy right now, like financially not feeling secure, because I ended up investing in my own healing instead of instead of just focusing on career, and yeah, make different choices, and not knowing if it's the right thing. But there is this inner knowing that there is no other way, though. And so I did realize at some point it's not about being hard on yourself and choosing the word that I'm investing in myself, instead of, wasting money or the negative views of it. So yeah, if any of this resonated with you, I know there's lots I do want to share. I just find it hard sometimes in the moment when I think I want to share, but I don't have the capacity to show up and record myself. So I welcome questions. I think for me, that's easiest. I always found it easiest to share with people when they have a question, because it connects to them, and I can speak to them, meet them where they're at. That's actually, I think, one of my strengths, and it's truly being able to provide value. So if you've got questions, or even if you just want to share where you're at, and maybe some of what I shared is relevant in your journey, and it connects us that we are in healing in community and we're not alone, I also appreciate that. Part of the challenge with healing trauma is, especially from early childhood, is it's all relational. And so healing requires the relational aspect, and that's kind of harder to do if you're on your own. Not to say impossible. I've learned IFS, internal family system parts work, and so when I have the capacity, I I have access to my higher self or core self, or capital S self, depending which school of thought or ways of doing it. And when I have access to that, I can actually hold the container and talk to my parts, younger parts of me, and get to feel that relational healing. But there are days I don't have access, like today, and thus it was much harder. And part of what I think was happening, and also based on the research I did, is potentially we don't have access because our higher self or the capital S self is actually allowing the parts to just feel into all of it, because that's the only way to close the loop. And now I'm in the phase where it's just trying to close all the loops that has been worked on, which is many. So yeah, I just want to acknowledge all of everyone out there that you got it. You've got this. Something that I learned from Sarah Blondin, who is from Canada, the same province I'm in, British Columbia. One of her guided, guided meditation. She writes beautifully. They're more like written words that just soothe your soul, like to the core of you. But something that I learned from her that I found super helpful is to say the words like, I love you and I'm listening. Because so many of us that have had unresolved trauma, with the fact that trauma occurred, is that we didn't get the needs met in the time where we really needed something. And this is not blaming parents or blaming people. It's just that, unfortunately, it wasn't met in the time. And then we didn't have either the resources or within ourselves, because we're young, we don't have that cognitive reasoning yet, or there wasn't someone like parental wise around or capable, right? Or they didn't realize something that was needed by you wasn't met, because everybody has their limitations too. So for us to be able to say that to ourselves can be really healing. And you can start to feel the difference of your core self or higher self. That's something that's bigger than the younger part of you. And I find when I do more somatic approaches, like holding your hand over your heart space, putting your hand over your your diaphragm or stomach, these two places, is where we feel fear, we feel tension. So you put your hand over, breathe into, and just feeling that part and feeling held, and then just saying, I love you and I am listening. And when you're quiet enough, grounded enough to hear it, that itself can bring up emotions and technically healing, releasing. So I want to offer that to you, that I love you and I'm listening. And I'm wishing you a beautiful Sunday and a gentle and compassionate healing in your journey.